We're going to start with Min in KL, is in Malaysia. Min, and here's the interesting question. The question is, what's the best way to say something negative to someone? Okay? So how am I going to say something negative to someone? And the one thing that, I'm only giving you several hints, I'm not giving you everything about effective communication or good communication skills. But there's one thing is, people say, oh, you should be honest. And the answer is, yes, you have to be honest, but you don't have to be too honest. And you're like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Well, I'll put it this way. Next to honesty, a second part of communication is love. Honesty and love, right? Which means that, you're not sugarcoating it and telling them not what the issue is. But one of the parts I actually find that's really, really difficult when it comes to giving criticism is it's hard when there's no relationship there. Or if you're only giving negative criticism all the time, and even if it's said in a nice way, it feels like, oh no, there they come again. Why? Oh my gosh. And why do I get nervous? It's because they only say negative things. It's like, haven't you guys ever had that phone call, like your boss or whatever? They only call you when there's negative things going on, right? So then when the boss calls, you're like, I don't want to answer it. Why? Because in your brain, your brain has reacted like whenever that person calls, something negative is going on. And yeah, I've had that in my life too, where I get a phone call, I'm just like, I can't do this right now. I'm too stressed. I get stressed from seeing that person on my phone, right? One of the things that we have to understand is in a relationship, yes, of course, there are different ways to give a negative criticism to someone. But one thing I do want to suggest to you guys is we have to be in a relationship where it's very open, where you give constructive criticism, you give praise and encouragement, but it's a real living, trusting relationship. And when that trust is there, what happens is then this person knows for certain in their heart that this person is there for the betterment of myself, right? And that's one thing I really want to encourage a lot of people is just make sure that you've built a relationship there too. And I really want to encourage you guys to build upon that relationship first. Because if there is nothing there, or if you're only giving negative comments, or majority of it is negative, then people sometimes are afraid. It's like hey, can you please come to the principal's office? Oh, you get freaked out, okay? So I really hope that you can work on that first, is the relationship between you and another person, and making sure you're not only talking to them only when there's a problem, okay? We got a lot of questions here. Let's take a look at, this is Sarah in New York, okay? Sarah in New York says, what are some tips you have to communicate in times when you are upset or mad at someone? Okay, I'm going to give you two different things, okay? Well, one thing. And this is something I want everyone to understand is when you are mad or upset, you cannot have effective communication. You just can't. Why? Because, put it this way, when you're mad or upset, honestly, when I get mad or upset and I start telling someone else about it, I get more upset. And you said this, and you said, right? And you get really angry about it. When you're upset or mad about something, you shouldn't communicate right away. You should actually calm down. And I'm going to give you two things you can do to calm yourself down. I just talked before about stress and that you got this cortisol shot in your brain and your central nervous system goes on hyperdrive, right? There are two things that actually help you calm yourself down and reignite your prefrontal cortex so you can control your emotions. And what is it? It's either prayer or meditation. Now, prayer and meditation is proven to calm people down, to make people think a little bit more deeply, and to bring them back to reason. So I would suggest not to go right in at it when you're mad or upset, but you can just be honest, say, hey, I just need some time to process this. Then you can go away, take a day or two, or a couple hours, or a couple minutes, and just meditate. For those of you who have faith, you can pray. And it is proven that prayer actually calms. Like the prefrontal cortex is about self-soothing. And something super interesting, I'm going to tell you this is very interesting, is people get into deep meditation or deep prayer releases this happy chemical in your brain called oxytocin. The interesting thing about this is oxytocin comes out in your brain like when mothers are in labor. Like it's so painful, but they're so happy, right? And this chemical also brings trust, social trust, and attachment. And the interesting thing is when people get into deep prayer and deep meditation, oxytocin comes out, and even though your environment is threatening, you still feel safe, right? And that's why a lot of people who have faith, when they get to pray in a threatening situation, even though it's threatening, they feel in their hearts, wow, you know what? God's there, and it's going to be okay. So I do suggest in those situations of emotion, it's better not to talk right away, or else it could get really ugly, and it's better to calm yourself down, pray or meditate, get yourself into where the executive functioning is working, and then you can really get yourself to communicate properly. I hope that helps. Also, let's take a look at Yuan Yu, YY. We'll just call her YY. I'm assuming it's a girl too, from Singapore. Wow, we got from everywhere, New York, Singapore. Okay, and the question is, what are some tips you have to speak well? Is it more of how you say it or what you say? Well, speaking well, if it's just about speaking well, the content doesn't matter. Why? Because someone who speaks really well can convince people that smoking is okay. Right? There's a lot of people, like if you look at the news and the media, there's a lot of people who speak really well, and because they speak well, they can say false things and still convince people, right? But if you think about it carefully, just to speak well, I do suggest, like the easiest way to do it is go to like a speaking association or a speaking club, like Toastmasters. Or there's so many different tips you can find on YouTube. But when we're talking about speaking, there's clarity, pronunciation, there is volume. Sometimes you have to be loud, sometimes you're soft. There's, silence is a big one sometimes. Silence is deafening, right? And there's a lot of different tools that people have in speech. And I do suggest you guys take a look on YouTube. But there's a lot of things you can practice. But you have to practice and actually keep practicing speeches in order for you to do well. All right, let's go all the way to Athens, Georgia. We have an Aaron in Athens, Georgia in the U.S. Oh, cool. What should you do when someone else starts reacting to your words? Okay. So let me tell you how someone's reacting, like, they're like getting really angry at you, okay? Now, what happens is, so you're here, and then they react. Now, what happens is, if you react, then they react more. And then it just keeps getting higher and higher, and it blows up into something ridiculous. Which means that no matter what the situation is, you have to keep it here, right? Because then they'll never get higher than that. When you know how it is when two people are talking, then one person speaks louder, the other person speaks louder, the other person speaks louder, and then it just gets into this full-blown, like, they're shouting at each other. When someone reacts, there's one person you can see online who's so good at this. His name is Jordan Peterson, Canadian professor at U of T. You gotta watch some of his debates and like people just attacking him, and he looks like he's sleeping. Like seriously, he looks like nothing phases him. He's like, okay, I didn't say that, but... And he just goes on. And it diffuses the entire situation. What happens is when it escalates, it keeps getting higher and higher. Someone's got to stop it at a certain point. And usually, things happen. Usually, if you keep escalating, it stops when it becomes like extreme, like physical violence or, you say something just terrible and rude. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. Let's see. In KL, we have Sweat May. Oh, okay. In KL. Okay. And she says how to tell someone that he or she is making a mistake without offending that person. Okay. So it's kind of a general, it is a very general, someone's making a mistake. How should I tell them they made a mistake without offending them? Okay. Well, it really depends on the situation. Why? Because some things, like for instance, if you know a person and they are terrible at handling mistakes, right? You have to also assess how big the mistake is. Because you're assessing whether it's worth it to go into it and get like damage put on you. Because you have to think about that. is it worth it? Because what if this damage comes, and this is something that's really, really small, that doesn't really affect anything, right? Then it's something that you have to really gauge in your head is, if I engage in this conversation, what is the effect that's going to happen, and is it worth it? Because, a lot of it, you do have to think about yourself too. You really do have to think about yourself in this situation, because I know many people who are too self-sacrificial that they'll spend hours and hours in conversation because someone is offended by what they said because they made a mistake, and we're talking every day, 2 to 4 hours just explaining, and in the end, you just get burnt out, exhausted, and you get into a position where you don't want to meet this person again, right? You really need to assess the damage, or what's the result of it, and also how big the mistake is. Because if it is a very, very big mistake that is something that causes harm to your business, or causes harm to like your social life or your friendship, then it is something that you should talk about. But I do feel that it really depends on the situation, of how much you know this person, how big is the effect, right, on you or your something that's connected to you, right? And this is something that sometimes people need to learn on their own. Why? Because no one will listen to them. But the problem is, you might say, well, I should have said something because, then they would have known. And the answer is no. We know some people will never listen. But what happens is, if you already get into a fight before that time, they learn their lesson, it's very hard for them to come to you after and talk to you about it, right? Like, in the end, I would say that if you really care about this person, this relationship, sometimes keeping the relationship is more important than being right. And this is where, in conversation, where honesty and love go together. Yeah, sometimes it's better, like if it's a mother and child, even if the mother's right, sometimes it's better not to. It's not about being right. It's about keeping the relationship, okay? Let's go over to Levi. And Levi also, I believe, is in the U.S. I think he's in Georgia also. Says, how would you go about persuading someone to see things your way at work, right? So a lot of these things have happened before, and I would say the exact same thing as in, well, sometimes the best thing to show people is through your actions, and you show them that it's actually working. Because one thing that we have to understand about other people, and this is just across the board when we're communicating with people, is you can't control people. And that's something, a reality we have to face in our life, is we can't make them do anything. We just can't. And that's something we have to realize in our heads is, yes, we can teach them the best way. Yes, we can show them this is cheaper, more effective. This is something that will help you, that is not gonna be as dangerous. But in the end, we have no choice. Like, we have no power over what they take. And that's why people have their own lives. After giving information and after showing something, do they have to listen to you? And the answer is, no, they don't. Do they have to do it your way? And the answer is, no, they don't. Right? If you were the boss and you made a standard operation protocol, an SOP for that is this way, then that's the only way you can call them on it, right? But if it's just friends at work and you found a better way to do something, the thing we have to realize is the relationship is like this, same, right? If it's that relationship, we just can't make people do it. And even if it's like a boss to a boss to a worker, even then, the worker doesn't have to listen. Even if it's a standard SOP, the only risk is it worth losing your job if you don't listen to the boss, right? But there's no risk of not listening to you, because if you're on the same level, it makes no difference, right? Same level of a job. So I do think that we have to understand, like, one of the things we get in our brains is, yeah, you know what? Can't control people. I just can't, right? And I can't make people do anything, and I can't even make them listen to me. So if we have that in our brains, then what happens is, when people say no, we're not going to get frustrated or angry, even though it's a better way. And even if they don't listen, or if they don't even want to listen, we could be like, what the heck? Why wouldn't you just want to listen, right? That's their prerogative. And you'll see later in the future is that these types of people will have less and less relationships if they continue to do it that way. And that's kind of the repercussions of their communication. Where the people are effective at communication will get promoted, the people effective at communication will get the jobs, and the people effective in the communication, people want to work with them, okay? So I hope that helps you out too. Is there any more questions? Ooh. John in Singapore. John in Singapore, good question. What is a good way to keep my emotions in check that my cortisol does not shoot up? There's a couple of physical things that you can do, and one of them I really, really want everyone to practice a lot, is breathing techniques. These help like crazy, they're proven, okay? In sports psychology, every elite athlete does this before the big moment. And what is it? 4 seconds you breathe in, 4 seconds you breathe out, and 2 seconds of nothing. And then breathe in 4 seconds, breathe out 4 seconds, and then hold 2 seconds, right? And you just got to do it twice. And what this does is it slows your heart rate. It allows you to calm down. It allows you to get yourself back into a rational and reasonable mode, right? And I understand, because there are things that we're sensitive to, and that's a normal thing because it's more dear to our hearts, right? So I hope that I hope that helps out. But breathing techniques is one thing. It's so helpful. Like even when I'm angry, I do my breathing technique before I pray. Because I don't want to get into prayer like, hey God, this person says, rah, 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 rah. Like, I got to calm myself down. Like, all right, this is my situation, and I want to see things in a much clearer way. Okay. I think this is the last question. Last question is from Shinky in Singapore. There's a person named Shinky. Okay, cool. Shinky in Singapore. I'm just kidding. He's my friend. Shinky in Singapore says, how do you recover or resolve a situation when you have already started a misunderstanding? Okay, so already starting misunderstanding, that means that you have, which means that I'm the one that started the misunderstanding. Of course, the first thing that has to happen is the apology, right? And that's not an easy thing either, but the apology has to come first. Once you apologize, it is showing the other person that you acknowledge what your wrong is, and also you don't know that that's what they think either. You know what I mean? You don't know if what I think I did wrong is what they think you did wrong. And another thing that you could bring up is, hey, I apologize. I believe, I wasn't thinking like da 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 da, right? And if you have anything else that you want to add, like if you think something else I did wrong, please tell me, right? And then once they get everything off their chest, it becomes like all the emotional stuff comes down, right? And once the emotional stuff comes down, then you begin to have conversation, right? And like this is something that's I want to make sure that, like, I've seen a situation where someone is very angry and storms into the room, like a parent of someone in the church storms into the room. You're like, whoa, and you're kind of like frozen, right? The cortisol shoots, like, what's happening? Someone just, the parent's angry, like, whoa, right? And you're sitting like, what's going on? And what happens is you either freeze, or you might fight back, or you're gonna run away. It's like, I'm not the pastor here. Yeah, right. So, what happens in that situation is, how do you calm down the situation? Number one is keep the level of volume low, much lower than what they're speaking, right? So it's like, hey, okay, I'm sorry to hear this. Hey, let's grab a seat. When you're standing up, it's much easier to be in a power stance or a power position when you're angry, and it gives people more authority, right? And it makes people feel they have more authority. You have to get them to sit down first and go eye to eye, and then from there speak quietly, get them some tea. And the reason why I would do this is you stall the situation so that the emotion can go down, right? And you give them time, you sit down, you grab them some tea, you put it down, and you say, okay, in a quiet voice, like, okay, what's the situation, right? So there's a lot of different things that can happen, and a lot of when someone else is reacting badly or there's a misunderstanding, we need to react properly. And this is something, a work in progress for everyone. Like, man, I got too much energy, but I got so many stories. You'd be like, what? Yeah. So we want to get ourselves where we're always in a calm state, or a calming state. So the person's talking to you, they're going to slowly go down and down. So if you raise your voice, then what happens is it's going to be a fight, like I was talking before. But if you put in a very calming, low, and a little bit quiet tone, then the person actually has to listen to you, right? And you want to make sure that when you try to break the misunderstanding, you're not standing up together. Bring yourself into a calm environment that's not very noisy. Sit down, look eye to eye, and also make sure that no one is in a defensive or overpowering body posture. And this helps a lot, but you want to be the one that is the calming person. And apologize first, and then after everything is said, and listen to what they said, and apologize if you did anything else to hurt or to make this misunderstanding happen. And then once that is resolved, and then you can go into the actual information that you were trying to convey. All right? I don't think there's any more questions, right?